and the Masters of the Universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!" Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. Only 3 others share this secret. Our friends, the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, and Orko. Together we defend Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
Hello, this is TFG1Mike, and welcome to the second chapter in Tales of Eternia. With me for this journey into the Masters of the Universe franchise is, of course, OptimusSolo. Hello.
Good day to you, sir.
Yes. Oh, boy. Wow. Truly shocked. We are recording this before any feedback has been given, before Episode 1. Episode 1, we just released it. But during that process of editing Episode 1, I cannot believe we talked for 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Won't always be that long, folks. We had a lot to talk about with the first episode.
Yeah. In this episode of Tales of Eternia, we'll be giving you our thoughts on Episode 4, Dragon Invasion, Episode 5, Curse of the Spellstone, and Episode 6, The Time Corridor. So we hope you're ready, because it's time to go back to Eternia.
Good. The growth serum works perfectly. Baby dragons grow to full size in less than a minute. And if you think that's magic, wait till you see what I do with the Dragon Pearl.
Tila, Avion has just been attacked by a...
Let me guess. A dragon.
Right. How did you know?
Dragon eggs are falling from the sky all over Eternia. Look! It's time for your nap, flamethrower. A good thing my father made more than one stasis ray.
Now! That ought to hold him for a while.
This dragon hunting is tiring business.
Well, I'm afraid there's no time for rest. There are more dragons waiting in the Mystic Mountains.
My plan has worked perfectly. While He-Man and his friends are busy battling the dragon invasion, we will enter Castle Grayskull. The space portal will transport us there. Follow me.
First up today is the Dragon Invasion. Take it away, plot man.
Alrighty, Dragon Invasion, Episode 4, as far as the order in which they were aired. If you were going by production order, I believe it was Episode 9. And Dragon Invasion was written by Michael Reeves. Dragon Invasion starts off basically in Dragon Valley with Skeletor and Beastman as they steal several of the Mother Dragon's eggs. When the Mother Dragon attacks, Beastman's powers prove not to work on her, and Skeletor destroys the ground beneath the beast, causing her to fall into a ravine, and then they take off with the eggs. Meanwhile, at the Royal Palace, Orko is entertaining the royal family. During dinner, when a crashing sound is heard outside, the heroes investigate and find a dragon's egg within the palace grounds. Before their eyes, the egg hatches, a baby dragon appears, it immediately within a minute grows to full size and attacks the palace with flame and etc. Tila takes the king and queen to safety while Adam transforms into He-Man and Battle Cat, of course, and they attack the dragon with the help of Tila and Ram Man. Man-at-Arm arrives with his new stasis ray just in time to freeze the dragon. Now transition back to Snake Mountain. Skeletor reveals In the chaos, as baby dragons grow to full size, due to his growth serum all across Eternia, Tila and Orko take the Wind Raider and use the stasis ray to freeze another attacking dragon. It's basically the Masters trying to combat all of the different dragons from everywhere, including Stratos, who reports that a dragon has invaded Avion, and Skeletor and his evil warriors journey to Castle Grayskull under the cover of the attacks, and upon arrival, Skeletor challenges the sorceress to a duel. With the aid of the Dragon Pearl, which magnifies Evil Lynn's magic by 100-fold, they overwhelm the sorceress and trap her within the pearl. He-Man and his friends arrive at the castle just in time for Skeletor to seal Grayskull with a force field. He-Man has the idea of uniting the dragons, working as a team to break the force field, so he and Tila head to Snake Mountain to confront Beastman, and by defeating him, all the dragons are now freed. He-Man sends Tila back to Grayskull with the dragons. The dragons unite with their fire breath and destroy Skeletor's force field. Then the heroes attack Skeletor, but he escapes through a portal and retrieves the Dragon Pearl from Snake Mountain where he had hidden it. He-Man confronts him, though, and the two battle outside the fortress. Skeletor uses the energy of the pearl to enlarge himself in a strange scene. When in the heat of the battle, he falls off the edge of the cliff. He-Man grabs his hand and saves his life, and a dragon surprises Skeletor, forcing Skeletor to drop the Dragon Pearl into Blood Falls. The villain makes a getaway while the dragon dives into the falls and rescues the pearl and destroys it, freeing the sorceress. And they return to Castle Grayskull, where the dragons walk through a portal to return to their home.
Bluish-green Charizard, I choose you!
That is TFG1Mike.
It's a Pokemon reference, people.
Oh, thank you for that. In case you didn't get a rundown, the bad guys in this episode include Skeletor, Beastman, like I mentioned, Eva Lynn, Panther, of course, and then Trapjaw and Jitsu, and the good characters, the King, the Queen, Orko, Man-at-Arms, Tila, He-Man, Adam, / Cringer, / Battlecat, Stratos, and the Sorceress, and Ram-Man.
Okay, I know, as soon as we publish this episode, that a lot of people in the Masters community are going to come after me for this. I don't remember Jitsu for nothing.
There's a reason for that.
He's well, he's getting his own Masters of the Universe Classics current up-to-date action figure, and everybody at the conventions this year were like, "Oh my god, it's Jitsu! Yay!" I don't fucking get it.
Well, this is a special episode because this is the only episode that he appears in. So,
oh god!
According to everything I've read, unless he somehow shows up in an episode that I don't know about, I am almost positive that this is his only appearance in the entire series.
Good lord. Plot points. I thought the plot was very well done in this. I mean, Skeletor creates a diversion, and he actually gets inside Grayskull.
That was a cool moment.
I mean, he accomplishes one of his goals, because since we recorded last week, Skeletor, you asked me what the goal is here. You had said you weren't sure what the goal of the Evil Warriors was.
In the one episode, yeah.
Right. Skeletor's goal is to capture Grayskull and capture the planet, essentially. Basically. I mean, he's a world domination kind of guy.
I wasn't sure if he ever did get inside of Castle Grayskull. Maybe he does it multiple times, but I was interested to see that he did that in this episode, because I couldn't remember trying to think back if he did or how often he does get inside of Castle Grayskull. So that was cool to see.
Yep.
I don't have necessarily a problem with an overall plot. I do have some parts about the plot that I will bring up in a later section. But like overarching thing, I don't really have too many issues with it.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good for what it is. I mean, and like I said, it's a well thought out plot. It's a, I did have one thing that really doesn't fall into the other categories. It's more so a question. We know the sorceress becomes Zor every time she is not in Grayskull, right? However, how does this theory apply when she was trapped in the Dragon Pearl in human form, gets released as a human, and it immediately shows her then transforming into Zor? that was kind of a head scratching moment for me. I didn't like. I don't know. It's almost like a force field. As soon as she steps foot outside the castle, she immediately transforms. Whereas every time we've seen her to this point, she is transformed by choice, not automatic.
I didn't realize
default.
that. I guess I'll have to keep my eye on things because I didn't realize she did that. And also another thing is, I wasn't sure if she was doing that by force or by choice, since nobody else knows that she is Zor except for
That's the other
inner
thing.
circle. I'm going to start referring to Adam, Man-at-Arms, and Orko as the inner circle, I guess.
Yeah.
Save me from saying all their names every time.
Yeah, that's the other thing. She does this in front of, the dragons and whoever else it is that's there at the scene. And it's like, wait, I thought only they knew about that. See, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't really, I don't take points off the episode for it. It was just one of those things where it was what the hell? Like, So if any of the fans out there can explain the whole transformation thing is, we know and understand that when she is in Grayskull, like in Tila's quest, she said, "I choose to go to Tila's side," and she does transform herself. But in this, it wasn't even like she chose to do it. It was forced upon her because she was not in the castle.
So something we got to figure out if it's a force or if it's a voluntary action, and if I'm pretty sure that she's only going to transform in front of the inner circle. She didn't actually transform in front of any other people in this one, did she?
I don't think so. No,
I didn't think so either.
Because I think all the villains had already gone by then.
Right. And our lesson from Eternia for this episode came from Orko, and it was all about treating animals with respect, because Skeletor did not treat those dragons with respect.
Yes.
And there was like an inner lesson throughout the episode of teamwork.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like multiple things going on here.
Very cool.
By the power of Grayskull, I command the drawbridge. Open!
So we have entered the halls of Castle Grayskull, and here is where we're going to talk about our positive moments on the episode. I've got a few. How many do you have?
I only have a couple.
All right, you can go ahead and let's talk about your stuff first.
One thing I thought was kind of funny how Skeletor got a dig in against Merman when Merman's not even in this episode. It was near the beginning, and he kind of called Merman out for not being intelligent.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny to hear from the evil leader. I like that at the end, they explained how Evelyn and the rest escaped. They didn't just say, like, it didn't just go unnoticed and then all of a sudden they appear in the next episode. Because that's something that bugs me in cartoons, is when the good guys capture a bad guy, or, trap a bad guy, or do whatever to a bad guy, and then the next episode the bad guy's right back with all the other bad guys, and it's not... it's not explained what happened or why. And in this one, it was like... Because they had clearly seemed like they had captured Evelyn and a couple people that were with her. I can't remember who was with her at the time, if Trapjaw was or if Jitsu was or whoever, but they had captured Evelyn and a couple people. And at the end, when he gets back, they actually mention something about, she got away through a portal, or she used her magic or something. So even though it's just a minor detail, to me that sets it up so that then the next episode you don't have to be like, wait a second, they were captured. So I like that they actually explained that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes probably from this entire episode, and maybe so far from the entire series that I've seen, was the quick exchange between Jitsu and Ram Man. Jitsu apparently has like a super punch or like heavy hand like slash type thing, and
it's a karate chopping action. I think.
The karate. It's like a super karate chop, and he uses that against Ram Man, and then Ram Man uses his Ram Man ability back forth, and Ram Man is like, I think I won that exchange basically, even though he was kind of dazed too. I just thought it was funny seeing those two characters go at each other, because neither one of them necessarily comes across as the most intelligent. They're more like the brute force people. So it was cool to see those two go at it.
I was half expecting just to piggyback off of that, I was half expecting to hear Jitsu say, Judo Chop! 20 or 30 years before Austin Powers.
Yeah. What about you?
All right, so I don't remember between last week's show and this week's show. Beastman is constantly talking back to Skeletor, or he's constantly mumbling under his breath. In this episode, he is directly talking back to him, and Skeletor's like, What'd you say, Beastman?
Mm-hmm. That was pretty good, actually.
Thank you very much. That
and then he just fell off the
last too long. Yeah, I just fucked it up. I
did not remember that about Beastman at all.
I didn't mind it last week when he was muttering to himself and Panther heard him, as I mentioned in last week's episode. I didn't mind it then, but if this is going to be a running gag for Beastman, every episode where at least once an episode he talks back to Skeletor of like, oh, Skeletor, you won't always boss me around, ha ha ha.
I don't actually mind it because I don't remember that about his character at all, so I'm kind of finding it as like a new way to think about Beastman. I always thought I didn't give him credit for any type of intelligence or being able to strategize or, backstab or whatever, so I'm kind of liking it. I always thought, I kind of knew Evil Lynn had a little bit of that in her, but I never knew Beastman was like that, or I knew and forgot. So we'll see if I get tired of it, but so far I haven't minded it.
I mean, I didn't mind it in this episode, but it was all as I'm saying is if it's going to be a continuous running gag, it's going to get old. I love the Orko for some comedy. That's so awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
That was pretty damn cool. All right, so just to let everybody know, hopefully some of the listeners that listen to a certain podcast that has currently not been in production but is supposed to be, hopefully some of the Mask Mayhem listeners are listening to this show because He-Man versus Mask moment. As we all know, in Mask, Matt Tracker and crew know about Venom. But the same cannot be said about Venom knowing about who Mask is. Here in Masters of the Universe, both sides know each other. Hence, He-Man's deduction of Beastman controls animals and Skeletor controls Beastman is very believable. I liked that.
Yeah, that's cool.
That they made that connection. And as I said in the plot, Skeletor is actually thinking, and he diverts the Masters from entering Grayskull with the dragon stuff. And again, the whole I'm gonna freeze you with this freeze ray or immobilizer ray or
stasis ray.
Stasis, yeah, immobilizer. Wheeljack is not in this series. That's logical. Get rid of the thing controlling the dragon so they can help you free Grayskull. I thought that was pretty good. And how can you not mention the baby dragon licking Orko's face to death? That was so funny at the end. I really liked that. But that's what I have. Did you want to bring up anything else for Grayskull moments?
No, I mean, there wasn't like a bunch of stuff that stood out for me. I don't want it to make it seem like I didn't like the episode. There just wasn't a bunch of like moments that just kind of grabbed me besides the Jitsu and Ram Man showdown and the other things that I mentioned.
All right, so I think I'm going to push you over the Blood Falls at Snake Mountain.
It's not very nice.
Go back to Snake Mountain, Skeletor. We have enough trouble without you showing up.
So we have entered the Snake's Mouth, and we're at Snake Mountain. I'm going to start this one off. For a minute there, I was going to have something negative to say about the immediately growing baby dragons, because they don't explain that at first. Mm-hmm. It just, the dragon egg lands, hatches, you see a baby dragon for 2/3 of a second, and then it grows to full size. Yet they explain it away with the growth serum stuff. So I really don't have anything negative to say about it since they did explain it away, which again, it goes to show you that this series and these writers are actually thinking, unlike certain other 80s series. All right, let's talk about this, shall we? What other evildoers are there on Eternia so far, outside of Skeletor and the Evil Warriors? Sorceress flat out says that they have had trouble, that they have enough trouble without him showing up. Really? What other pitfalls are affecting the Eternian people? I mean, seriously.
That's true.
She flat out says that. You just heard it as, as we entered Snake Mountain. And it's one of those things where it's not even a what the fuck moment. It's a moment like, bitch, explain yourself. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, what other problems are they having? We have enough trouble without you, Skeletor. Really? I think things are pretty cozy usually when they view anybody like the royal people like in the palace. When Skeletor's not around, they're playing chess, they're having parties, they're eating cake.
Exactly. Um, so back at Snake Mountain, Bonebrain says too bad about the others, but at least he escaped. What? I mean, he wants loyalty amongst his followers, yet he's not going to be loyal to them. And I know it's a whole cliche of, oh, I'm the big bad guy, I can double cross anybody. But if anyone has learned anything from, evil lions and hyenas, you don't cross people. Come on, Lion King reference. Come on, Scar versus the hyenas.
That's true. That's a terrible reference. But
it's not. Shut up.
Yeah, I don't know, but I also thought it was kind of funny. It kind of showed a little bit of his character that they're all just little minions to him. They're little tools, and he could care less if they get captured as long as he doesn't.
That's true.
Which later, I guess, we'll find out because he has a lot more minions to choose from. But at the time, it's like, well, those are your only friends so far that we've seen. So maybe you should care a little bit more about them.
Yep. What do you got for...
my main issue with this episode, not a huge issue, but I just think we're a little bit gimmick heavy in this episode. And what I mean is, we have the Dragon Pearl, which they go after, which has some powers of some sort. We have the Stasis Ray, we have the Growth Serum. It just, to me, almost got a little overkill with the different gadgets and gizmos and items that they're using. Yeah. And the abilities of each become a little bit confusing because I understand that the dragons become huge because of the growth serum. Skeletor apparently becomes huge because of the power of the Dragon Pearl.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm not trying to explain it away, but let me try to deepen your mind here. He became huge because... Shut up. He became huge because of the Dragon Pearl combined with the Sorceress's powers. The Dragon Pearl was stuck in...
I don't understand why that made him big. And it seems odd to do that in an episode where you already had dragons becoming big due to growth serum. And I just didn't get the connection of why Skeletor became this huge person. I could understand if he became more powerful, if he was stronger, had better magic or whatever. I don't understand why he became big. And it was weird looking at it because you weren't expecting it. And all of a sudden when he grabs He-Man or whatever, you're like, why does he have a giant hand all of a sudden? Like it takes you a while to figure out why they're explaining that he's huge. Because, you know what I mean? You kind of have to just do that in your mind. And watching it just kind of jarred me as this is odd. And I just think there was just a few too many things between the growth serum, the stasis ray, the Dragon Pearl, etc. I don't need that many items being used in one episode. Like I said, it's not a major issue. It was just kind of a minor issue. And I think I don't want to make too many mask references in this episode, but I couldn't help think of that when Skeletor drops the Dragon Pearl because he's scared by the dragon. It was a convenient villain drop like we saw a million times in Mask.
That's true. That's very true.
But that's really the only things that I could maybe nitpick about here in the Dragon Invasion.
All right, let's raise our golden, silver, and bronze power swords, and we're going to go to the awards section. Yay!
Hang on, Skeletor.
Have saved you.
I guess I value life more than you do, Skeletor, even yours.
So yes, it is time to head to the awards here, and we're going to hand out some power swords and havoc staffs and all that good stuff. I have to beat the sorceress over the head with a havoc staff for not explaining the other pit. I'm sorry. Even though that doesn't take the overall score for this episode for me doesn't take away that part of it doesn't take away. But I'm sorry, that was just something that just like left you wondering what the hell is she talking about, and she gets a Havoc staff for that.
She had some weird lines in this episode too.
She did, yes. Yeah. What about you? You got any awards you want to give out?
I'm actually going to give out a Havoc staff too.
First, I think.
And my Havoc staff will go to Jitsu. And the reason I'm doing it is because this dude shows up out of nowhere. We don't really know where he came from. We don't know why he's there. And I'm not saying this can't happen. I mean, Ram Man and Stratos show up in the first couple episodes, and we have no idea why they're there or who they are. But all the other bad guys have been explained so far, in that first episode where Skeletor highlights them, where they're at, what their strengths are, whatever. And then all of a sudden we have Jitsu sitting at the table. Who's a terrible stereotype.
Yes.
First of all, he mumbles a few mutterings and things that can almost be resembling words in his few crappy lines that he gets. And then he gets totally owned by Ram Man. And then that's it. He is done for the series. Done. So that was not a moment in the sun for Jitsu. He had you sometimes hear about like your 15 minutes of fame. He had like 5 minutes of not. 5 minutes of crap. He didn't even get a brief moment in the sun. So there's a reason why he doesn't come back in the series. Because that character was awful. So yeah, he can have that Havoc staff.
Much hate, man. We're going to get so much hate.
People can like him and have the nostalgia fact of, that was that briefly seen character from the original series, and it's cool because it's not, one of the main characters, and we can like, that was a crappy character.
Now, for the fans...
He had a cool karate chop. That was it.
Right, yeah.
But it didn't work.
For the fans and listeners who might read the Masters comics, let us know if he has more to do in the comics, or if, as Kevin is saying, this is it. This is his shining moment. And we're going to run into characters like this throughout the rest of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and throughout She-Ra, Princess of Power.
Right. I just think this was a very weak, brief appearance of a character that was a crappy character to begin with. And you did nothing with your time, sir. I know it's the writer's fault, but...
How many Battle Cats are you going to give this one?
This one kind of sits in a place for me where there wasn't anything awful, there wasn't anything good, so I am going to give it just 3 Battle Cats, kind of somewhat in the middle, but on slightly on the positive side, I suppose. But to me, like I said, there was just a few too many gimmicks and plot devices used, and I don't know, I wasn't just a huge fan of the dragons overall. I guess they were fine, but I'm not a big dragon guy, so they did not do a lot for me. So yeah, just a few too many plot devices for me, so 3.
Yeah, for me, as far as Orcos, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. This wasn't an episode like, oh my god, this is the best thing this show has ever done. But at the same time, it wasn't just mediocre to me because, as I stated before, Skeletor actually has a decent fucking plan, and he actually executes it very well. He does get inside Grayskull.
That's true.
That for me gives it a 4. As far as the whole dragon thing, as a kid, I liked dragons watching this show. Nowadays, with all the, hype and everything else and all the, the fangirls loving dragons and everything else, I give a shit less about dragons nowadays. Back then, loved them. And again, that's why I liked this episode, was because the baby dragon at the end. So, yeah, 4 out of 5 Orcos for me. And we are going to move on to our next episode.
It better be worth all this trouble, Evelyn.
It will be, Skeletor. That I promise you. Otto ridande serenada Mardor.
Adam, my machine couldn't have made a storm like this. But I know of something that could. The Spellstone.
The Spellstone? I thought it was only a legend.
Oh, it's real enough. But to do this, it must have fallen into the hands of someone evil.
I have an idea who that might be. Come on, Cringer.
Up next is Curse of the Spellstone. Take it away, Plotman.
All right, Curse of the Spellstone. Air date September 9th, 1983. This is obviously episode 5 in viewing order, episode 7 in production order. It was written by Mark Scott Zickrey. I have no idea if I say that right, but that is what I'm going to go with. Basically, we start off, Skeletor and Evil-Lyn attack the Temple of the Fire People in order to gain possession of an artifact called the Spellstone, if you couldn't tell from the title of the episode. Evil-Lyn uses the artifact to enhance her dark magic and cause fierce storms that ravage the surface of Eternia. After deducing the villain's location, He-Man, Battlecat, Stratos, and Ram-Man battle Skeletor and his hover robots at the temple, but are trapped underground in the process. At the royal palace, Evil-Lyn, disguised as an old woman, plays on the fears of the nearby villagers and tricks them into giving her possession of the creeping Horak. Not Hordak, creeping Horak, the harshest of Eternian punishments used in days of old. Telling the villagers that the royal family are to blame for the terrible storms, she uses the Horak to trap the king and queen. Basically, they throw it on the palace, and it starts to cover the walls and going after them. And Men-at-Arms, Teela and Orko are trying to protect the king and queen and save themselves. But nothing seems to work against the unstoppable creeping Horak. I just like saying that. After fighting the fire people, which we'll get to in a minute, and escaping the temple, He-Man and the others head back to the palace, where they find Skeletor, Evil-Lyn, and Trapjaw. The creeping Horak has nearly enveloped the entire royal palace, but He-Man manages to retrieve the Spellstone from the villains and uses its power to destroy the Horak, saving his friends. Faced with defeat once more, Skeletor makes his escape, and the heroes send the Spellstone back to the Temple of the Fire People, where it can be protected. There were some details left out, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
So we have Evil-Lyn, Skeletor, and Trapjaw as our evil characters, evil warriors. And then we have so far, what seems to be the standard collection of Masters, which is Man-at-Arms, Ram-Man, Stratos, the royal family. And Adam, of course, as He-Man. There was... I'll talk real quick first. There's 2 different storylines that seem to be going on at the same time, which is kind of interesting to me for a plot. We haven't really seen a split story so far to this point, where we have what's going on at the Royal Palace with Evil-Lyn in her disguise and the creeping Horak and the royal family. And then we have He-Man and his couple of people with, who is he with? Ram-Man and Stratos. Yeah. Dealing with the fire people and Skeletor and that. So we had kind of a separate split storyline, and I thought that was interesting from a plot standpoint.
Yeah, that was very interesting, but at the same time it was like, I'm surprised they didn't use more of the cliffhanger commercial breaks for it, because...
Yeah, they could have.
It seemed like every dangerous situation, especially with the creeping Horak story, as far as, oh, this is the second to last room in the palace. Oh, this is the, third to last room in the palace. Overall, I liked it, but at the same time, it wasn't... I like the dynamic of the story, and as you said, the whole split storyline, and, story A and story B and everything else, but overall, I don't know, I just was kind of in the middle on the plot for this one. I don't know.
Interesting. And then our lesson from Eternia after the end, this time it came from Man-at-Arms. And again, this one, it's kind of connected in a loose way to the episode, but because it was dealing with Orko. But it was basically that practical jokes aren't always funny and they can end up hurting people, which is kind of a strange lesson.
I will say, compared to so far in this episode of the podcast and last week's episode, how we, at the end, are now talking about the series so far, I'm not going to talk about it all the way. I'm just going to talk about this one point. Orko's magic act is one giant practical joke. And we saw in the first 3 episodes last week that his jokes always backfire. So I can kind of see this tying in, because Man-at-Arms did say, you've seen Orko's magic.
Yeah.
Back. So I can kind of see it. It doesn't.
It ties in. It just doesn't tie into the plot.
Episode. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't directly tie into the Spellstone or Curse of the Spellstone, but it ties into the overall plot of the series.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, let's go to Grayskull.
Well, that takes care of the water.
Now, how do we get out of here? Hey, talk about fast service.
Finally, someone on our side. Oh? Or maybe not.
So we have entered the sacred hallowed halls of Castle Grayskull. I don't have much positive for this one, so I'm going to go first. Oh, poor Cringer. He got awoken from his nap. And that scaredy face. Oh my god, that scaredy cat face. That was so hilarious.
Cringer's got some good looks going.
He does. I love Battle Cat's line, but you sure do pack a wallop. What is it about Battle Cat? What is it about that voice that Alan Oppenheimer does for Battle Cat that it makes me feel like I'm listening to my grandfather?
Interesting.
So He-Man is the best shot put athlete in Eternia, huh? What about you? What are your shining Grayskull moments for this one?
I liked a couple things. Again, with Cringer, I loved the way how he sulked over to He-Man in the beginning. It was like he didn't want to go, but he knew he had to. So he kind of like sulks over to He-Man in the beginning. I thought that was funny. This was one of the first episodes where I really noticed and paid attention to the background music, especially at the beginning. If you watch this episode at the beginning when they're showing the palace, there's like a wide angle shot that's showing a good portion of part of the palace or something. And it almost reminded me of like a Star Wars moment where the music just took over. And it seemed like it was epic, it was royal, it was important. And I really was like, wow, the music in this is really cool. And I know there's been music that's been cool on all the other previous episodes we've talked about, but it didn't catch me until this episode.
Yeah, the music for this series, you essentially have two running themes. You have the good guy theme, the hero theme, and the good guy hero theme, I guess, could essentially be the music that is behind He-Man and the actual overall theme music. But then you have the Palace Eternian theme. And then on the flip side of that coin, you have the Snake Mountain dun 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 dun. You know, that kind of yeah. You're so right.
It's just like it wasn't like because a lot of times when we've gone to the palace, it's been more of the fun, like oracles playing jokes, or they're kind of like whimsical music. But this was a session where it was the palace, and it was more of a grand, royal, like epic sound, and it just struck me and kind of grabbed me a little bit.
On that wide shot of Eternia, or on that wide shot of the palace, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder here, I'm not trying to interrupt you, but it's like, I kind of got the impression that it was a very, very oversized Pride Rock. Because if you look at that wide shot, the palace is like up on this land, and then there's all this other land down around it.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Part of what we kind of talked about with the plot, I like that there was two storylines going on. I like that the groups were split up because it allowed you to see, like, you got to see Teela and Man-at-Arms doing their thing. You got to see He-Man away with some of the actual, just a couple of the masters doing his thing. And I like that. I also like the part of the plot that has Evelyn showing us her ability to disguise herself and kind of play that role. And I liked how Evelyn was the one that was trying to trick the villagers into things, and she was the one kind of in disguise, undercover, doing her thing. Because it also separated the evil warriors in that way. So I kind of enjoyed the split plot and what it allowed us to see, as opposed to just the traditional all the good guys against all the bad guys thing. So yeah, I liked seeing the disguised Evelyn, I guess, and that part of the plot.
I wonder how many times Lou Scheimer watched Snow White and the Seven Midgets, because Evelyn and old Evelyn are essentially the evil queen and the old woman.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I just kind of noticed that when you were talking about it. I'm like, oh, yeah.
And I like that. I do like that Teela recognized her voice.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you could just pull the wool over her face. It's like she's using the same voice. Somebody should recognize it. Oh, they thought of that, and she did recognize it.
Yeah, I have an issue about that when we had to Snake Mountain, though.
Well, let's get there then.
I think our friends could use a nice swim.
I guess I'll take over Skeletor's throne in Snake Mountain this time around. Alright, so... Yeah, my biggest issue with this is something so small. But it's something that goes back to really shitty mask voice acting. Who the hell was voicing the redheaded village girl? That does not sound like a female voice at all.
I'm pretty sure that was Lou Scheimer's wife,
Wow.
Jay Scheimer, who occasionally would step in on Filmation projects. Usually it's Linda Gary that's doing all the females in this. And then later on in like She-Ra and stuff, we'll see Erica Scheimer, his daughter, voicing a few of the female characters. But I'm pretty sure that was his wife, according to the research that I've been able to do. But yeah, it was interesting. Probably because she was a lot older than that character was supposed to be played.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've heard Erica's stuff as a male character. Like, I've heard the daughter stuff. I don't mind that. But there's just something so wrong about, you know...
Yeah, that's not Linda Gary.
Yeah, not at all. The animation on Teela being knocked down and Man-at-Arms holding her is so weird looking. It's shown at such a strange angle that I'm not liking the stuff at all. It's... I don't know, it was so weird.
I didn't see that.
It's... Alright, you know how you have a standard stock shot of the hero, whether it be He-Man, whether it be Superman, whatever, holding someone in your arms, and you've got their legs dangling on one arm and their head dangling on the other. You know what I mean? In this, when Man-at-Arms picks her up, it's almost as if the camera angle, not necessarily the way he's standing, but it's almost as if the camera was like someone knocked it over and it was like tilted on its side, and it was, I don't know, it was just really weird. Okay, as you said, you like that Teela recognizes Evelyn. What I don't like about that is Teela says, I know that voice, it's Evelyn. Right in front of the king and queen, yet neither respond to her. No one... And it wasn't like she was whispering. She was like, I know that voice. You know, she basically declares it. And I didn't like that no one else heard what she said when she said it so blatantly loud. Weird. The other thing I kind of didn't like was when Battlecat is fighting the robot. Again, I have to bring up the weird animation angles. Plus, even though I know the power sword gives Battlecat power, since when do cats fly, regardless if he landed on his feet?
It was a jump.
That was a long jump glide is what that was.
Shot, so we might as well get some long jump in there.
Hey, that's true. What didn't you like about this one?
Okay, two things. That's really all I have for lowlights. I know that there's some stock footage, and I know it's early animation as far as a lot of the technology that we've become spoiled with and accustomed to. But there's occasionally in this series where the animation is beyond crappy. And the animation used... Okay, the Creeping Horak, when it gets thrown, it comes out fine. I'm fine with that. It starts climbing the castle walls and whatnot. Looks fine. Looks animation-wise, I'm believing it. And then, as it enters the palace, we are shown shots of the royal family running through corridors. And then it shows behind them as the Creeping Horak chases them down the corridors. The animation on the Creeping Horak coming down the halls and the corridors is awful. It looks retarded. It looks ridiculous. I don't know if I need to get a picture or what of this, but hopefully people that are watching the episode or have watched the episode recently know what I'm talking about. But the Creeping Horak turns into something that's no longer creeping. It's like flying or floating through the halls in a weird amoeba-like... It just looks terrible. So I did not like that the Creeping Horak looks so stupid. The other thing, it kind of piggybacks with the last episode that we just talked about. There's been a couple easy way outs that I've seen. The last episode was when the dragon scared Skeletor and he drops the pearl. This one, we have this evil warrior named Evelyn. She's a main part of this plot. She is holding on to the Spellstone. And with basically no effort whatsoever, the villagers take the stone from her.
Yeah.
Like, the guy comes up behind and grabs her, and then the other person just grabs the stone out of the grandpa or the father or whatever, just grabs the stone out of her hands. Like, that was kind of easy. And I know He-Man tries to talk to that fact, and he says, oh, it's not always about who's strong or who has power. Sometimes it's just about being brave. Well, sometimes it's about our evil people not being retarded and just letting someone grab something out of their hands, too. So, weak part on Evelyn's part for just letting the villagers grab that out of her hands. And I'm hoping we're not going to see a bunch of, like, easy outs like I'm starting to see in these episodes.
The other thing I'm going to bring up really quickly now that I've thought about it is the fire people.
Yeah, we kind of breezed over that as part of the plot. I didn't really highlight that, but yeah, at one point, He-Man and Stratos and Ram-Man are trapped underground, and all of a sudden, like, a door opens, and they come out, and the fire people are, like, there waiting for them, King Helios and his fire people, and He-Man has to convince them that he's not bad and they're not evil. Apparently the fire people are aware of some things, but not aware of other things, because they were aware that He-Man and those guys were down there, and they opened basically the ground for them to come out.
Yeah.
But apparently they know nothing about what's going on in their world and in their environment.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they would know, because they're right near Snake Mountain somewhat, that Skeletor is evil, and that these are the good guys.
My problem is more so in the literal sense of the fire people. You would think, even though He-Man is the most powerful man in the universe, punching a guy made out of fire would burn your fucking hand.
It's one thing that cartoons a lot of times get wrong. And I know it's cartoons, so we're supposed to suspend some of the laws and rules of science and physics and whatnot.
Right.
But there's a specific scene where Battle Cat tries to attack the Fire Cat. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And he swings through, and he's like, oh, and it's kind of a clever line. He's like, oh, there's nothing to them, or nothing to him, or whatever. Because he basically wipes through, like, air. Like, it's like air, or apparently, you know, it could have been fire, and you could have been, like, trying to capture fire, and you just don't get burned, I guess, because you do it real quickly. Like, you know how you can, like, put your fingers through flames, like a candle, and not get burned or whatever. So maybe it was something like that. But then, later on, He-Man catches... Does He-Man catch King Helios, or does King Helios catch He-Man?
He-Man saves him somehow, but he touches him, yes.
And now all of a sudden the guy's solid and can be held on to.
Yeah.
So cartoons do this all the time when you have some type of creature that's not like a body, you know, where it's like fire, or it's some type of air, or some type of essence or spirit or ghost or something like that. If you can't make contact with them, or like sometimes it's like where they walk through objects, then you can't be all of a sudden solid in one situation where you can be touched.
Yeah. And I know I'm nitpicking the hell out of this, but it's just this one glaring thing to me where they flat out say these are the fire people, they're the, you know, keepers or guardians of the Spellstone, etc., etc., etc. Well, if someone is made out of fire, you don't touch them. I mean, I don't know. Let's see what kind of awards we're going to be giving out.
A lot of good you are, Beast Brain. And you'll leave when I tell you to.
It's now time to give out some awards and also our rankings and everything else for this episode. Do you have any power swords or havoc staffs you're going to give out?
You know, sometimes, like, I don't know if I said this in the other episode or not, but we don't always give this stuff out. It's more so if someone really stands out to us in the episode, or if someone's really horrible. So there are going to be times where we don't give them out. And I really searched and thought about this episode, and I really don't think there's anybody deserving of something that good like a power sword. And I don't think there's anybody deserving a havoc staff either. So I'm not giving anything out for this episode.
Lou, I like you, man, but I gotta give your wife a havoc staff. Oh my god, that voice. Ow, my ears are bleeding. That voice was almost as bad as the horrible off T-Bob voice in. Oh God. What? How many battle cats you gonna give this one?
Well, I kind of went back and forth. I wanted to like this more. Well, I mean, I did enjoy the episode. I liked seeing Evil Lynn in disguise. I liked the split plot. There's just those couple things about the villagers getting the stone from her so easy, about the the fire people sometimes being solid and sometimes not being solid. Um, there's just a couple things that brought it down for me a little bit. So I'm gonna be a repetitive person here and give this one a three battle cats.
I'm also gonna give 3 Orcos. There was just too much. There's just too much illogical stuff here. Like you said, with the villagers and everything else, and me pointing out about the fire people, and you also piggybacking off of that and talking about, either they are solid or they aren't, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, I give it 3 out of 5 Orcos, and let's move on to the final episode of the day.
Let's talk about some time travel.
Where's the DeLorean when you really need it?
I have it, Skeletor!
The Wheel of Infinity, the ultimate key to the destruction of Castle Grayskull.
Yes, great power, Skeletor, but it isn't enough to destroy Grayskull.
When the wheel is in the right spot, there won't be a Castle Grayskull, and I shall rule all Eternia.
What about He-Man?
Where we're going, even He-Man can't stop us.
And where is that?
We are going back in time, to a time when there was no Castle Grayskull.
And finally, up today, we have Time Corridor. Take it away, Plot Man.
All right, so as far as dates go, we have now moved into if we were back as a kid, back in 1983 watching this series, we would have just had to have waited a whole weekend for this episode. So we just got done with our first Monday through Friday showing, and it would have been that time where we had to wait over the weekend for our next dose of He-Man. So this was coming to us on what I'm assuming was a Monday, September 12th, 1983. It's the 6th episode shown, it is the 8th episode produced, and it is written by none other than a familiar face here, Larry DiTillio.
Woo-hoo.
So, for the plot of the Time Corridor, Prince Adam, Cringer, Man-at-Arms, and Orko are enjoying a picnic in the grounds outside the palace when Zor summons them to Castle Grayskull. When they arrive, the sorceress tells them that Skeletor has traveled into the past and is working alongside the Ape Clan in a plot to destroy Castle Grayskull with an artifact called the Wheel of Infinity. It's kind of a cool name. The heroes use the sorcerer's time portal to travel to Eternia's past, where they immediately meet and save Zalora, the leader of the Snake Clan, from a Dragosaur. I guess that's half dragon, half dinosaur. With the gratitude of the Snake Clan, the heroes enlist their aid in storming Skeletor's fortress. The fighting is fierce, but during the battle, Zalora is captured and taken to Dragosaur Isle. He-Man, Man-at-Arms, Orko, and Battlecat follow the captors to the island and manage to save Zalora. The sorceress uses her powers to reach through time and appear to them in a vision. She urges them back to the fortress where Skeletor is about to start the Wheel of Infinity, and it's spinning, and we'll get to what was going to go on with that in a minute. He-Man grabs the wheel and decides to spin it even faster. Well, I got to stop here. So the basic thing here is Skeletor was going to start this wheel, and it was going to start spinning very slowly, and it was going to gain speed over time. Eventually, the castle was going to be built on this same land, and by the time we get to that stage in time, the wheel would have been spinning fast enough that it was going to explode and destroy the castle. So it was kind of like it was like he was setting a time bomb for years and years into the future. So He-Man has the idea that he couldn't stop it, because once Skeletor had started it spinning, he wasn't going to be able to stop it. So what he did is he said, well, I will spin it faster. So he spins it faster, which is going to make the explosion happen way too early, which is basically in a matter of minutes. Fearing an imminent explosion, Skeletor makes his escape, and basically leaves He-Man there to be destroyed, but He-Man hurls the wheel into the reaches of space where it explodes, and we have fireworks and whatnot. And after they've made their farewells to Zalora, the sorcerer summons He-Man and his friends back to the present and thanks them for saving Castle Grayskull, and does her duty to try to close the time portal, Skeletor's time portal, forever. And so the Snake Clan and the Ape Clan will be able to get along and build the world that will become Eternia.
Yeah.
So it's a time travel plot. We're dealing with going back in time and seeing Eternia's past a little bit. As far as Masters, we see Man-at-Arms, Orko, Prince Adam / He-Man, Battlecat Cringer, and the Sorceress are the main ones we see. I don't think Teela makes an appearance in this.
She doesn't.
And, of course, the King and Queen don't make appearances in this. Bad guys, we see Skeletor, Triclops for the first time since episode 1, I believe.
Yes.
And Fangman.
Yeah. We'll get to him in a later section.
So, thoughts on the plot, sir?
I love the plot. I think it's great. I think it's interesting. What I thought it would have made it more interesting, instead of having Skeletor build a fortress on the grounds of where Grayskull would have been, was why not go back in time to when they're actually building Grayskull and destroy it? Because the whole part of the plot is, wow, I'm going to go back in time and build a fortress right on top of where it's supposed to be built. Why not just go back to the time when the actual physical Castle Grayskull was being built and just blow it up then?
Yeah, that's true.
Why build something else? I mean, it's, oh God, it's like, I don't know.
I like the idea that we're going to travel back in time. I like the idea of I can't get into Grayskull, so I'm going to be clever and destroy it before it has been created, basically, or have a way to destroy it without having to get inside it. I think that's great. I like the idea of going into Eternia's past. I think it was a great plot idea. I think it was a well-executed episode. I do, though, think that it could have been even better.
Okay.
It's kind of going to get ahead. I want to save it for another section. I think they could have even met even more potential than they did with this episode. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I still like the episode. I think it's a good episode, but I think it could have been even better.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it. I thought it was a great episode, a very good plot. I don't think there's too many things in the plot that really just make me just look at the screen and say, huh?
I guess I forgot to mention a couple things. The Orko was used as the interpreter at the beginning so that they could understand the Snake Clan's speech. So that was kind of a side little detail. And the other thing, that there was a little bit of a cliffhanger about Zalora being trapped in time and them that's what they were having to save her from. Yeah. And then the lesson at the end from Eternia, we get back to a lesson from He-Man, and it is all about learning from our past and living in the present.
I liked it. I thought it was, it's a good message. It's kind of like the same thing of, learn from your mistakes. You can't go back and fix them. You got to learn from them and move on.
And there was also kind of like a seize the day type thing where it was like, live for today, make today a good one type deal. So it was kind of like a twofold lesson.
Phone call from God. If it had been collecting, it would have been daring.
Yeah. But I thought it was...
Captain, my captain.
It was definitely a clever plot.
Yes. So we are going to go on into Grayskull after this.
Before it gets exploded.
I guess that'll teach Skeletor not to bug us.
So we have entered Castle Grayskull, and it has not exploded just yet. We'll have to race to get out beforehand, but I don't know. For me, this one, let's see here. Much like you in last week's episode where you said you liked the animation on Skeletor's movements and his walk and just the way he overall moves, what really gets me about Skeletor is his laugh. It never ceases to amaze me, and I just love hearing that cackle.
I love his laugh, and I love the way they do the animation where he like tilts his head back and kind of does that. It all goes very well together.
I love, I thought it was funny. Orko's tricks ended up with Men-at-Arms having cake all over his face.
It always gets back and it always, like, Man-at-Arms is always the brunt of the bad end of the practical jokes and the magic.
But what I will say about that is, though, is that in this episode and in episodes that are based, solely Orko stories, apparently going back in time, his magic works.
Yeah, his magic was working a lot better back in time, and he was even like, "Wow, this is working."
Yeah. And again, it goes to my next note. Galloping Galaxy, I did it. The power sword is a baseball bat. That made me laugh.
That was awesome. I knew it was about to happen too. I'm like, he's gonna swing and hit that thing.
I love what I really love about this episode, and it's more so about how the time travel is done. I love the fade out and fade in animation showing the heroes going back in time and then showing them returning to the present. I thought that was a very cool animation effect that they used.
Yeah, I agree.
What about you? What do you like about this one?
Any plot that has time travel I usually like, unless it's done really bad or wrong or something like that. So just the fact that we have time travel involved is awesome. I love the idea of going into the past, seeing things how they were before they are, how we're used to them, so that is cool. I thought it was a clever plot as far as, I think it shows Skeletor's intelligence. In a sense, and that it was a very clever plot. Like I said, he was like, it's kind of like that, if you can't beat him, join him thing. Well, if I can't get into Grayskull, I need to think outside the box, and how can I, get power over this some other way. So I thought that's a clever plot overall. I thought it was a very telling and also showing off He-Man's intelligence, and that he was clever enough to be able to figure out brute strength isn't necessarily going to be able to fix this because I can't stop it from turning. But wait a second, what if I speed it up so it explodes before Grayskull's there? I thought that was awesome on He-Man's part.
Now, remind me again, I know you just said it in the plot, but remind me again, is it the Wheel of Infinity or the Infinity Wheel?
Wheel of Infinity. I think that's a cool name for that thing, too.
Wheel of Infinity, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of Animaniacs there.
The Wheel of Infinity, it sounds like a Journey album to me.
I just think it's a cool name. Like, I think as a kid...
It is a very cool name, but...
And kids are always talking about infinity and using that, so like when you say like, oh, the Wheel of Infinity, that's going to strike a chord with kids, and they're gonna be on board with it, usually. I also have kind of sensed a trend in the last couple episodes, especially in this episode, where I think it's hilarious. I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing that the writers did, being that he is the heroic... character that's supposed to be the role model and whatnot, but He-Man has a very frequent he has a tendency to call the bad characters names.
Yeah,
he does it a whole lot, especially in this episode. I noticed it where he's calling people not necessarily bad names, but he's always calling the creatures or the evil warriors or Skeletor some type of name. It's not like jerk or anything like that, but it's like Blunderhead or
Chrome Brain or Chrome Dome,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I don't notice it from anybody but He-Man, and it kind of just struck me as kind of an interesting choice and something you don't necessarily hear out of your heroes most of the time. You're not going to hear Duke or Optimus Prime or some of the other main heroes of the 80s cartoons calling villains names.
Well, Pilgrim John Wayne would never do that.
So I thought that's kind of something to watch for and something I'm kind of enjoying out of He-Man's character. It gives him a little more depth as a character instead of just being like, you are a traditional hero character. You must do everything right and just and blah, 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 blah. It gives him a little bit of personality.
Yeah, it does. Very much so. So let's head into the mouth of the snake as we head on over to Snake Mountain.
He-Man, they've got Zalora.
Skeletor! Stop!
Too late, fools! Now you have a choice. Save Castle Grayskull, or try to save this woman from Dragosaur Isle.
Now that we've got past the snake's tongue, I only have 3 things that I didn't like about this one. The walking and the running animation with the side view is really starting to irritate me now.
You just gotta accept it, love it, and love it. That's how people run in Eternia.
Fuck that. Okay, so I like that Orko has to do a spell to get the snake people to be able to be understood. But did Bone Brain have to do one too on the ape people? Seriously, how is it that they can speak English and stuff? Now, okay, now, yes, I know monkeys, humans,
Snakes
blah,
have
blah,
forked tongues.
yeah.
And they talk in tongues because that's the devil's work, and snakes are the devil.
Yes,
Although
I
snakes are
know.
the good people in this one, and apes are the bad people. But they're all good in the end.
Well, apes are essentially the dumb dunces that are over in the corner with dunce hats, but yeah. Um, I mean, it's not like a really like negative to where it's going to take away from the overall enjoyment of the episode. It was just one of those things that I noticed to where one has to be cast a spell over to be able to understand them, but the other doesn't. It was kind of silly. Um, I do not remember Fangman at all. I still can't believe he's getting his own figure in MOTUC class or MOTU classics. He has no actual character depth at all, and is just a stand-in for Beastman.
It's not even standing in it for Beastman, so to speak. I mean, it kind of is. I didn't realize that this guy existed. I had to actually grab a picture of him because I have to add him to the page over behind the voice actors. It's almost like it's a precursor um, to Whiplash
Yeah.
or to Clawful or some of those characters. Even a Cobra Khan, so to speak. It was almost like it was a precursor to those, but I did not realize that this character existed until just now. Well, when I watched the episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, he didn't necessarily. I mean, he had better moments than Jitsu did.
True.
He got a little bit more time in the sun so far, and he didn't just get owned in his only action. So that was, I guess, good for him.
What about you? What are your...
let me say here.
Uh-oh.
Last episode, meaning our last episode of the podcast, I jokingly said that Stratos and Ramman were the ambiguously gay duo that is just hanging out in the woods and randomly coming by, strolling through the neighborhood.
Yes.
Why are Man-at-Arms and Prince Adam having a picnic? Prince Adam's like, oh, it's a great day for a picnic. And I'm totally like, they show it kind of from a distance at first, maybe even shadowy figures or outlines or silhouettes or whatever. I'm totally thinking, oh, this is kind of interesting. It's Prince Adam and Tila on a picnic. No, it's Prince Adam and Man-at-Arms. They should not be having a picnic. I know Tila's not in the episode, and I know this is the inner circle, so maybe they do picnics together and have like little inner circle meetings. This is the second ambiguously gay moment duo thing that I've seen in this series so far. And now I'm going to point out every other time I ever see that for the rest of
the whole point about He-Man is you don't talk about He-Man. So having meetings amongst each other about talking about that makes no
I don't think
sense.
He-Man can go into the military. That's all I'm saying. And maybe the Masters of the Universe can't either. This is going down a very bad trail, and we're going to stop it right now. All right. To my point that I was talking about with the plot. I love the time travel plot. I love the idea that they went back into the former days of Eternia, et cetera, et cetera. To me, when you do something like that, the door is wide open, and there is so much potential to throw little details or little things in there that the viewer can then connect with modern day Eternia. I know they're on the site that Castle Grayskull is going to be built. I get that. That is a connection between the past and the present. That is, however, the only connection that I could draw from this trip to the past.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad because I know you only have so much time in an episode and I'm being kind of picky, but I'm very greedy with my time travel plots. And I would have loved to have seen some type of connection to some of the stuff that we've seen in the brief 5 or 6 episodes so far that we've seen in modern day Eternia. Mm-hmm. And I understand that they're talking about that these are the 2 clans that are going to build Eternia up. And you kind of, I could guess you could fudge and say that there's some type of connection because there's a snake clan and eventually we have snake men and snake characters, but I don't think they're anywhere connected here. I think that's a stretch. Instead of the snake clan and the ape clan, it would have been cool if one of these clans or both of these clans had some type of connection to some of the characters that we've had in modern day Eternia. What I mean is if there was some type of connection to like the Avian people, or if it was some type of connection to I don't know, like some Beastmen or the Mermen or something. Just give me something so that there's a connection instead of inventing these two clans that we know apparently were completely wiped off the planet and have no descendants that are still around.
Right.
So I just like little things like that, or if it was like, or if it even showed like more of the territory and you got like a glimpse into what would become Snake Mountain or what would become the place where the palace was, or some type of connection to modern day. I just wanted a little bit more connections from my time travel story.
Yeah. A final thing from me that I kind of missed when I was reading through my notes. At the end of the story, Saoirse says she is going to go make sure Skeletor can't use his time corridor again. It would have been nice if they had actually shown us this.
It was kind of interesting. She just apparently was going to do that on her own, and we don't need to see it.
And again, it goes back to what I said, a couple episodes ago, back in Dragon Invasion, when she was trapped in the Dragon Pearl. Oh no, she did transform into Zord, but how?
We're just not sure on the whole Sorceress thing.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is, like, she says she's gonna go make sure Skeletor can't use his time corridor again.
Mm-hmm.
How is a giant falcon gonna do that?
She has powers, sir. She has magic powers.
They're called claws. Oh. Oh boy. I think it's best if we just go on to the awards.
Yes, sir.
Now that's what I call real magic.
Alright, it is time to give out any at all awards. You got any?
Yes, I do. I guess I should really give this one out as a shared one, but I pinpointed one character. I'm giving out a Power Sword. And like I said, it should probably be shared between Skeletor and He-Man, both for having really good ideas in this episode. But I was just really impressed by He-Man in this episode. And I tend to not try to give it to the obvious here, but number one, to me, even watching this as an adult, and this should have probably been one of my highlights of the episode, I couldn't predict how that was going to go with the Wheel of Infinity.
Yeah.
So it's spinning, and Skeletor is cackling, you can't stop it no matter what, once it starts, and all this stuff. I wasn't trying to do his voice, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what are they going to do? And He-Man, thinking on his feet, immediately is like speeding it up, and then all the wheels connected for me, and get that pun, wheels, it's connected. Anyway, everything was like, the dots were connecting, the lines were being traced, yes. And I was like, oh.
Polka dot again?
What?
Nothing.
And it immediately all made sense, and I was like, wow, genius move, He-Man. That's awesome. You thought outside the box, and you're speeding it up, so now it's going to explode beforehand. This is just great writing, and I just really liked that He-Man was that smart and that quick on his feet to do that, and not to mention all the other cool stuff he did in the episode. But I just give him a lot of credit. I should give Skeletor like a little bit of Power Sword, I guess, too, because he was the one that came up with the idea in the first place, which was a clever idea. But yeah, I think He-Man, just for having the know-withal to spin that faster, was deserving of a Power Sword.
I don't know, because I haven't watched ahead yet, but I don't know if the half power swords are in this cartoon. I know in the comics, and I know in the 2002 series and in the 2002 era, there is power sword halves. So I think it would be alright if you gave half the power sword to He-Man and the other half to Skeletor.
Excellent.
For me, I just overall enjoyed the episode so much that I didn't really think that any of them.
Okay.
I mean, overall, I just enjoyed it so much that I didn't really pick out one specific moment at all. So I don't have anything. No awards for me.
All right.
No monument, He-Man. No monument. What about ratings? What do you rate this as far as how many Battle Cats?
I'm really torn. I almost feel like last episode that we did, episode 1 of the podcast, that I should have given out 4.5s, because I don't think this episode was as good as those, but it was still good. So I feel strange giving it the same rating as I gave those, and I tend to want to give it a 3.5 just on potential not met. But I'm gonna go ahead and still give it a 4. It's just not as strong of a 4 as those episodes from episode 1 were. But I'll give it a 4 because it was still a very solid, cool time travel episode.
I really enjoyed it, like you. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I liked the whole mystery of it, the whole time travel mystery of, going back in time, what the hell are we supposed to do? Let's just walk around and find, just the whole, explore and you'll find shit. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as much as I did the episodes that were in the first podcast, so I'm going to give this one a 5. I like that we see that Eternia... I don't, and again, fans, please correct me if I'm wrong. I could have sworn this is actually, we went to pre-Eternia. If I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry. Comment on the website. Let me know you're fucking wrong, TFG1Mike.
Yeah, rake him over the coals.
Shut the hell up, you.
Okay.
But I like the whole thing of seeing where and how Eternia was shaped before it was what we know it as. So that's, just that whole aspect of the story is why I give it a 5.
Fair enough.
All right, we're going to go to the commercial break and some other fun stuff from these episodes, and we'll be back to close the show after this.
Time to learn the day's lesson. Hey, come on! The Wheel of Morality adds boring educational value to what would otherwise be an almost entirely entertaining program.
But the morals make no sense!
It's totally bogus.
Wheel of Morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn.
Grab your helmets because it's time to assemble Mask. The Geekcast Radio Network has launched Masked Mayhem with your hosts OptimusSolo and TFG1Mike. This podcast covering all 75 episodes of Mask will feature in-depth analysis of every episode, talk on the toys, and more. Masked Mayhem will run 30 podcast episodes. You can find us in iTunes and on www.geekcastradio.com. Get your spectrums ready as podcasting is the ultimate weapon. Tooncast is dedicated to the cartoons we grew up with. 100 episodes and more make up one of the GCRN's most popular podcasts. Join hosts TFG1Mike, OptimusSolo, Terror the Rising Star, and tons of guest hosts. We also have voice actor and writer interviews. Tune in to Tooncast as we look back on the cartoons that defined us as geeks. You can find Tooncast on iTunes and the web at www.geekcastradio.com. Tune in.
In today's story, Skeletor tried to conquer Eternia by using animals in an evil way. Animals, like all living things, should be treated with kindness and respect. I hope that those of you who have a dog or cat or maybe even a hamster remember that. When we have a pet, we also have a responsibility because they depend on us. But you can be sure of one thing, however much we love them, they return that love and more. Well, time for me to disappear. Bye.
Soundwave, jam that transmission!
Rumble Frenzy, Ravage Rat-Bat, Eject, Operation Interference.
No, there will be no Operation Interference. I am TFG1Mike, and you should be listening to my very first podcast, the TFG1 Podcast. 24 episodes covering the entire U.S. run of the 1984 Transformers cartoon. I also have a few supplemental episodes and an interview with Stan Bush. I bring in guest hosts who will be full-time co-hosts in Steve Megatron and fan of the show now co-host Pecan Court Michael. So check out the TFG1 Podcast. You can find it on iTunes and the web at www.geekcastradio.com. Transform and roll out.
You can now hear the Geekcast Radio Network while on the go with Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher is a free-use and talk mobile app available for your smartphone. And when you download Stitcher to hear Geekcast Radio, you'll have a chance to win money. Downloading is quick and easy. Just find Stitcher in the App Store. During registration, hit the promo code box and enter Geekcast Radio, all one word, to get automatically entered to win $100. The latest episodes of the shows will be waiting for you in your favorites. You'll get access to lots of other amazing shows too. Always available to you on demand, no syncing. It's Stitcher Smart Radio. Don't forget to enter promo code KeyCastRadio when you register.
You've all seen how Orko's magical tricks don't always go the way he planned. Sometimes they backfire on him. The same thing is true of practical jokes. Sometimes they don't go the way you planned, and you or someone else can get hurt. So be sure and think twice before playing a joke or a trick on anybody. Might not go the way you planned, and someone could wind up losing a finger or an arm or maybe even an eye. And no joke is worth that, is it? See you again soon.
Is this thing on? Oh, goody. Why, hello there. It's your dear old Uncle Joker here. I bet you're asking yourself, what could I be possibly doing here of all places? Well, I'm laughing at the fact that this new podcast presented by Geekcast Radio is called Legends of the Dark Knight. Who the heck knew the Bat was so popular? Ugh. Join Steve, Mike, and sometimes Tara for reviews on the greatest DC animated universe cartoon to ever meet Gotham City. So join moi for the talk of the town, or I'll send Captain Clown after you. He gets mighty angry when he doesn't get to have his garbage skull. So put on a nice big smile and join us for the next Geekcast Radio Network podcast, Legends of the Dark Knight.
Behold, Tooncast Beyond. What better way to follow up the GCRN's most popular podcast than to take it beyond? If you listen to Tooncast Classic, Toon Beyond takes it to the next level. We are covering cartoons in seasons. Join TFG1Mike, Steve Megatron, and a bunch of other hosts as we cover all kinds of cartoons from 2000 to whenever now is. You can find Tooncast Beyond in iTunes and the web at www.geekcastradio.com. Tune in.
As we've just seen, Skeletor went back into the past to make evil things happen. In reality, no one can go back into the past. That's only make-believe. But we can try to learn from the past, from things that have happened to us, and try to apply them toward being better people today. Remember, it's today that counts. So make it the best day possible. Until next time, this is He-Man wishing you good health and good luck.
So we have entered and exited Grayskull without it blowing up. We've gone through the mouth of the snake.
And dealt with some dragons.
And survived and dealt with some dragons and traveled through a time corridor and had curses of spellstones and everything else. Let's talk about the series so far. Thoughts?
Well, through 6 episodes so far. How I look at this grouping of 3 episodes, we did get a little bit of time travel and got to see a little bit of Eternia's past. And I suppose you could say we got to see a little bit more character development from a few characters, maybe. We got to see a couple new faces in Jitsu, Fang Face, etc. And a few other ideas of what other creatures live in Eternia. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, these episodes are kind of, like most of the series, are going to be standalone, one-off type episodes. Not a lot connecting with what we've seen so far. I don't think any of these 3 episodes were bad. I know you didn't like one of them a little bit at times, but I think these are all solid episodes. These are all episodes that I think would still be enjoyable to the audience they were directed at. I still enjoyed them. I wasn't bored with them. I wasn't, frustrated with them, so to speak. They were nothing to me nearly as bad as the one episode from last week. So, they were good episodes and whatnot. I'm still kind of hoping to have a few more episodes like we had in the first, in 2 of the episodes last week, where we get a little bit more backstory or we get a little bit more in-depth character development. But so far, I'm enjoying it. Kind of reiterate a few things that I said last week. I know Skeletor's after Castle Grayskull and whatnot, but I still would like to get a little bit more of the reason of how He-Man became He-Man, besides what we see in the intro. How long has this feud been going on between Skeletor and He-Man? I just want a little bit more. But so far, I'm happy with the series. I am enjoying it, and it's much better than I thought it was going to be so far. It's one of those things where you watch it as a kid, you loved it. I know I've loved it since then, but I was fully expecting and bracing myself to watch some of this and have my ideas of childhood be blown up in my face and all this other stuff. And I am not watching this with rose-colored glasses. I am just genuinely not disappointed so far.
Yeah, we actually explore stuff unlike a certain host aficionado.
I love that.
Not the one that you don't get along with, the other one.
Saying. They're so wrong in things they say about 80s cartoons sometimes.
For me, I genuinely don't know when I click play on whatever the next episode is or whatever on Netflix, because I'm watching them on Netflix. It genuinely takes me back seeing the intro. And when I see the title cards and hear the title card music, I'm gonna have to go back and grab some of that title card music at some point. I might do it for this episode. I might do it next episode. But just that beginning title card music that's there, I just absolutely love that, and I never know where the episode's gonna go. Now, another thing I noticed that wasn't really anything to do with the specific. Well, it kind of is, but it isn't. It's more so a general thing. Did you notice that in 2 of the episodes today, they opened up the episode by showing you the galaxy that Eternia is in? What did you think of that?
Well, the one I kind of expected it because it was the time travel one, and even though I didn't know what the episode was about, just from the name, the time corridor, I'm like, oh, they're showing the galaxy. It's going to be, there's time and space, so to speak. But then when they showed it in 2 of them, I was confused to a point where I'm like, is that how they're going to start a bunch of them? Did they just use that because they had it from the other episode? I did notice that. I don't really have an opinion yet so far on it, though.
I liked it. I thought it was interesting because it's not just, it kind of reminds me of, that's no moon. But it honestly does, because it's either, that section of, that scene in Star Wars, or even in the very beginning scene of Star Wars when you fade in, or not fade in, but when you open into the ass end of a giant ass Star Destroyer that's going after the little consular ship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it has that epic feel. And again, it also fades in. It's a slow fade in where it shows you the planets, and then it shows you the majority of what's around the Palace of Eternia.
Right.
Like I said, to me, it had that an oversized version of Pride Rock. But no, I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if that's going to happen all the time. But I kind of did like it in those episodes that we had today. So, anything else you want to point out for the overall series so far?
No, I mean, after the first 3 episodes, I had 2 episodes that really had my hopes up that, wow, these are some quality episodes, and then I had one that was like, uh-oh, I better be ready for crap. And these, to me, fell in the middle there, the positive side of the middle, and I'm just hoping that we can keep on that track, stay here or get better, and let's not return to the depths of Colossor.
Yes, no matter what Count Marzo says, Colossor Awakes is
awful.
Just awful. Fucking awful. Thank you for listening to Tales of Eternia. If you'd like to get in contact with us, leave feedback for the show, there are several ways to do so. Visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on all the episode posts. Send email to feedback@geekcastradio.com. Leave the show's feedback in iTunes. Please do this. Follow us on Twitter. The network name there is @GeekCastRadio. Mine is TFG1Mike. What is your Twitter?
OptimusSolo.
Become a fan on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/GeekCasterRadio Network. Call the voicemail line. Tell us the show you're leaving the message for and your name. 502-526-5821. There is a 5-minute time limit. And be sure when you call in to have your thoughts planned out ahead of time, because I do not edit voicemails together. We hope you enjoyed the tales today, and don't forget to join us on our next adventure. We'll be discussing episodes 7, 8, and 9. Creatures from the Tar Swamp, Song of Celise, She-Demon of Phantos. For now, I am TFG1Mike with
OptimusSolo.
By the powers of Grayskull, you all have the power.
Try not to hurt them. They're not our enemies.
We should tell them that.
There's nothing to you. But you sure do pack a wallop.